we decided to study the relationship between child mortality rate and GDP per capita. The graph shown by Gapminder reflects a direct correlation between the two variables, where richer developed countries have lower death mortality rates among children per GDP per capita. Child mortality, also known as child death, refers to the death of children under the age of 14 and encompasses neonatal mortality, under 5 mortality, and mortality of children aged 5 to 14. The leading causes of death among children under the age of 5 in 2016 were preterm birth complications, acute respiratory infections, intrapartum related complications, and congenital anomalies. The highest leading cause, acute respiratory infections, are serious infections that prevent normal breathing functions. According to the World Health Organization, acute respiratory infection killed an estimated 2.6 million children annually every year worldwide. Acute respiratory infection is caused by viruses and bacteria, which consequently would make sense when looking at which countries have higher child mortality rates. Poorer countries such as Somalia, the Central African Republic, and Liberia all are among the highest child mortality rates while maintaining some of the lowest GDP per capita. Poorer countries do not have the same access to medicine and pre-birth development that richer, more developed countries such as the US and China are available to them. Globally, Gapminder shows a huge reduction in child mortality as income per person begins to increase from 1900 to 1950. This directly correlates with the graph, as with increases in income per person, GDP per capita increases, and modern medicine is able to make advances in developing countries. It is also interesting to note China's infant mortality rate was relatively high until about 2012, where the one-child policy, which was relaxed in 2012, was allowed both parents to have 2 children as long as they were both only childs. As you can see within the trends shown by Gapminder, even the leading developed countries such as Russia and the US did not start making drastic decreases in child mortality rate until about 1940. However, there is one extreme outlier that can be found on the graph. India, one of the largest populated and developed countries, has an alarmingly high infant mortality rate, which is just under 7 times the US at 41.1 deaths per 1,000 births.
When comparing developed countries on the graph, India takes an unusual amount of time to follow the trend created by other countries. From 1800 until 1950, India's child mortality rates and income primarily stay the same, with some small strides in lowering child mortality rate. It wasn't until 1950 when India starts to follow the negative correlation with the rest of the world. India shows the negative correlation with child mortality rate and income because as India becomes more developed and the average income raises, child mortality rates go down. Furthermore, the United States developed a very interesting correlation route. For most of the 19th century, the United States average income increases, however, child mortality remains the same until the start of what historians have labeled the Second Industrial Revolution in 1880. This is when the U.S. begins to improve their child mortality rates and starts to show a negative correlation between income and child mortality. The negative correlation continues until the United States was impacted by the Great Depression in 1929. The Great Depression raises child mortality rates slightly. The Great Depression is a good example to show the correlation between income and child mortality rates. During the Great Depression, people in America had very little income, and this causes child mortality rates to increase because people could not afford medical help and could not live in healthy environments. It can also be seen on the graph as the United States economy starts to rebuild, child mortality decreases following the trend. In conclusion, lower income countries have higher child mortality rates due to the lack of medical research and advancements, as well as ignorance towards health concerns and safety precautions. Even a slight increase in attention towards sanitation and cleanliness would drastically decrease the global infant mortality rate.